Anyway, as I say, I'm very grateful to be here. It's an honor and a pleasure. And I wanted to start by saying how happy I was to see Australia taking really increasing its focus on work in sub-Saharan Africa. It's a value we share. It's a main thrust of our, what we call Feed the Future program in the US context. But it's more than that. It's because Australia has so much to offer, and we heard something about that today. And I would add so much to gain. I mean, the great thing about research collaboration and capacity building collaboration, it's a two-way street. I've seen it in my country, and I'm sure you have seen it here. I also want to join others who are congratulating the Food Security Center for where it's decided to position itself, bridging research and adoption. This is the key challenge now. Professor Jones flagged this in his opening remarks this morning. Vivian Anthony also mentioned it this afternoon. It's right at the heart of the G8 agenda. It's in the G20 agenda. And this whole issue of scaling and scalability, whether we're talking about technology or policy or management practices, is really at the heart of the challenge right now. And it's what's different now than, say, just a few years ago is that there's a lot of more in the way of resources going into agricultural development that were not there before. So now all of us who come out of the research and innovation side have an opportunity to connect to that. So this positioning that you've chosen, Melissa, is right at, it's just vital. I would also add that it's definitely enlightened self-interest on the part of the research community to really be creative in doing this. So how to do scaling? That's what we in the United States would call the $64,000 question. And we heard so many ideas today. It's a very dynamic landscape. But I just want to focus on one area of interest because it's a joint one for Australia and USAID. Dr. Jones showed in his talk this morning the curves of the different regions. And what we saw was intensification going on everywhere but Africa, basically staying flat. We have to bend that curve. That curve has to rise, it has to turn up. There's just no getting around the idea that if we're going to successfully achieve our goals in productivity and poverty reduction and nutrition improvements, that has to change. And I think it has to change for smallholders. And I have to give it to the Australians that they've really blazed a trail on the concept of sustainable intensification in Africa. Both John Dixon and Mulugeta talked about that and shared the exciting work that they're doing. And that's something that we at AID are really seeking to build on. So we appreciate very much the work of Simlesa and other work. And we're doing that through something we call Africa Rising, Rising standing for Research on Sustainable Intensification for the Next Generation. And we're already actively collaborating with the Australian programs, and we believe other partners are going to join. And this kind of collaboration involves a wide range of partners, as you heard this morning, NGOs, private sector, NARS, universities. It's a very exciting concept. And the reason it's significant here is because it's about putting technologies in the market context and the natural resource context together. So that part of the research proposition there is how does scaling work? How does adoption work? And how does technology move? So it's really, I think, very appropriate for the Food Security Center to be involved with this, and we're happy to be a partner. A few comments about that. Dennis Garrity talked about the convenient convergence. And I just would like to even go farther and say that I think sustainable intensification is climate-smart agriculture. It's about resilience, it's about resource use efficiency, it's about things like water holding capacity in the soil. So it's very much at the heart of that. It also, I think, potentiates and drives diversification. That was one of the concerns, of course, that we heard throughout the day. And we heard about legumes and trees, but there's livestock, there's fish, there's horticulture, there's fodder crops, all of which have a role to play here. And I think the key challenge, really key, is the livestock one. And it was exciting to hear both Apollinaires and Dr. Masami's story about the Newcastle disease, to see how small livestock could come in and really start to be transformative in the lives of smallholders. Finally, I want to congratulate the Australian International Food Security Centre for what I would call pushing the envelope on a key challenge. And that challenge is tackling the undercapitalization of African agriculture via a smallholder approach. We've talked about traditionally livestock and trees, and we heard about those important areas today. But John, when you talked about the two-wheel tractor, this is really exciting. It's going to come. The question is, will it come to smallholders or will it come to large-scale investors? So I really want to congratulate you for pushing that envelope, and I hope we can somehow be a partner there too. And I would add that USAID is taking some maybe similar steps in the area of small-scale irrigation. Not necessarily a whole field, but what about a farmer with 1 hectare that has 1/10 of her land under some sort of water management so she can have off-season production, she can have some livestock, she can have planting material. I think it's a very exciting area, so it's an area we want to work together. But and finally on that, there was a point about groundwater. I think there was just a British paper earlier this year about the excellent potential for groundwater, sustainable use of groundwater for irrigation in sub-Saharan Africa. So I think we have a long way to go there before we face the kind of problems that we faced in some other parts of the world. But of course, we want to keep those kinds of environmental issues in mind. Okay, so with those comments, then I'd like to then turn to my fellow speakers in this last session. And we're going to begin with Dr. Jean Lebel. And Dr. Lebel is Vice President for Programs in the Partnership Branch at the International Development Research Center of Canada. Jean, please, over to you.
You left your watch for me to watch my time? Sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. I know it's getting late. Listen, it has been a wonderful journey today, but I'm getting worried as it progresses because this morning Minister Carr made the announcement that we were launching a partnership together, ACIAR and IDRC. So, you know, this is one news that is out of my speech. Then we start, I said, well, you know, we're going to talk substance. So, you know, we had a session on farming system, tick. You know, what I wanted today have been said. Then market policy, social system, tick. You know, again. Food, nutrition, safety, yes, big time. You know, you've taken all my space. Education, training, capacity, yes, again. So I came to the podium and I said, well, I'm going to go back to history, the linkage between IDRC and ACIAR. Gabrielle mentioned the relationship, so being done. And, you know, I said, well, you know, and I have it here, what a beautiful city. Rob said it. So, Monty, Nick, please. I'm joking, of course. First of all, Joanna, thank you very much for the invitation. When I received your invitation in October, I put a marker on my calendar. I sent an email to Nick saying, should I go? And he didn't answer immediately. But in the meantime, I had another journey plan in Israel, and I said, well, Israel, Australia, that's about halfway. So yes, I can make it, I will go. And I'm very happy that I made that decision at that point. Because later on, and that was about a month ago, Nick and I met in Uruguay. And after 2-3 years of conversation around coffee or a drink, we said, well, if we have something to do, it's now that we're going to do it. And we spent about an hour together, and we shake hands. And we got back to our organization, and here we are today making this announcement for the launch of collaboration between our organization. And I think from this story, I'm going to tell you what IDRC is about, why we think with Australia and ACIAR and IFSC we're doing innovative partnership, and what we can hope for the future. I told you Rob introduced me as a Vice President for the International Development Research Center. For those of you in the room that don't know IDRC, we are a crown corporation of the Canadian government with a sole mandate, help to develop the research capacity of researcher and organization in developing region of the world, and do this through the provision of grants and awards directly to our recipient and developing region of the world. And we don't carry the research ourselves. We let this being done by you, many of you that I've met in other circumstances. And we have a formula, a motto. We say we provide the means to build the platform, but our sponsor researchers are delivering the keynotes. And they are using the research result in the context that makes sense, and as Linda Wei was mentioning earlier, that also find its way through the system in order to influence the policy development. Now, this story with Australia in IDRC date back to the creation of IDRC. Sir John Crawford was a board member in the inaugural board of IDRC in 1970. With Lester B. Pearson being the chair at that time, and David Hopper being the president of IDRC. And at this inaugural board meeting, he says about the law that created IDRC, that it was a unique piece of legislation. That was back in 1970. And in 76, he was commissioned, I think, by the Department of Foreign Affairs here, to look into how to improve the delivery of international research through the Australian Aid Assistance Program. And he came with this idea in 76 of establishing an international research foundation. And in his report, he was saying this foundation should serve to build the developing country research capabilities and innovative skills, as well as the institution required to solve their problems. I think that the two organizations, IDRC and ACIAR, have very common roots in the similarity of the mandate and on the fact that Sir John Crawford served us at IDRC on our board, but also was the father of the creation of ACIAR in 1982, I believe. Now, ACIAR, the new center that Melissa is leading, and IDRC have a lot of common. We build on respect and trust. We have experience working in the field. We have some credibility with the topic at hand, agriculture and food security. We have been able, through our history, to identify the gaps, but not only to identify them, but to start working also in these areas and providing support in order to fill those gaps. We have been able to think outside the box from time to time, and I think our organization have shown, and recently again, that we can be quite nimble and flexible in order to make things happen. So for those of you that do not believe that public organization can make things happen in a short period of time, you have a demonstration over here that in 4 weeks, we made it happen, and we mobilized each $7.5 million in order to grow the pot for support of research in Africa on food security issue. So thank you, Nick and Melissa. This is remarkable. And Joanna, also thank you. We have heard through the journey that the situation is not necessarily glowing. 234 million African undernourished, 27% of the world population. That's a number. What is the tragedy over here is that this number has been growing in the last 20 years. Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia are the two regions of the world where the number of undernourished goes up, despite progress in many other places. The minister mentioned the post-harvest losses in Sub-Saharan Africa of about $4 billion a year only for grain. We have discussed health. Some of you may be familiar with the work that IFPRI have done, Marie Ruel, indicating the first 1,000 of days of newborns are critical when it comes time for food quality and nutritional input. Cognitive impairment, meaning that longer in life, they will have some challenges. I'm pretty sure for most of you, 10 point of IQ is not that big to lose. For me, it is, if I lose 10 point of IQ, but, this is what we're talking about, having impairment that affect the development of children and their full potential to contribute to society. We've talked about value change, SMEs, underutilized crop, water management, irrigation at the face of climate change. women's farmer, smallholders, as well as scaling up innovation. And the session here is moving forward, so what do we do? Well, we do choices. We have heard many stories from you, many reason to hope, reason to believe, changes that have happened, moving in the right direction, and pursuing a journey to have a food-secure world. ACIAR and IDRC, with the support of AIFSC, made deliberated choices. We decided to be present where there is less attention, to fill niche where there's not necessarily a lot of resources, in East and Southern Africa initially. We made the choice to provide means to the best African researcher to work on the key issue mentioned today, as well as the one identified by them, the national authorities, and the regional organization, as it was described today by many. We will do this through competitive processes that are transparent, that are clear. We will do it for a period of time initially that will be likely to be around 4 or 5 years, and that will secure also collaboration with Canadian and Australian research community in order to network Africa with also the best capacity present in our countries. This will give the opportunity for African researchers to do what? Well, I think it will give them the pleasure to be surprised with their research and to bring result and outcome that can make a difference. We can hope for some successes over time, building up on existing work as well as new and innovative ideas. They will also have the right to fail. It's research. But they will have a duty also to understand why they fail, because often in these failures we learn more than in these successes. This is research. ACIAR and IDRC, with Melissa, we are working together because A, we trust each other, but we bring together a critical mass of resources that is larger than if we were operating in solo, each on our side. We have a desire to do better. We have a desire to build on this initial journey of collaboration in order to build a world that is more food secure. A world where Africans continue to grow and produce sufficient food. A world where Africans have access to food and can preserve it. Also a world where Africans consume quality and nutritious food in a sustainable environment. A world where research is not the end, but a means to help to build it better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jean. And now I'd like to invite Nick Austin and Monty Jones to the dais as well, please. Okay, it's my pleasure to welcome back Monty Jones. He started us off today. Monty is, I think, known to everyone here and far and wide. He is the Executive Director for the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa. So Monty, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, today has been a very long day, but today has been a very productive day as well. And speaking on behalf of African partner institutions that are looking forward to partnering with Australian counterparts in the fight against poverty and hunger in Africa through the Australian International Food Security Center. And noting that some delegates are still battling the effect of jet lag, and that includes myself, But this actually indicates how geographically far removed Australia is from Africa. And despite this distance, Australia is going into Africa to give support to Africa. So I would like to thank Australia for defying the tyranny of distance by deepening its engagement in Africa's development, especially during these times of economic slowdown. And today we heard that Australia spent, I believe, 90 million in 2011, 350 million US dollars in 2012, and we got 15 million US dollars from Canada. They've given quite a lot to Africa, and we say thank you very much for this huge support. But, ladies and gentlemen, Africa is on the path of recovery. Numerous countries in Africa are aspiring to attain middle income status in the next few years. There is great optimism about the future. The optimism is coming from within Africa, it's coming from outside Africa. But the harsh reality is that half of the African population are living in poverty and a quarter in hunger. So we still have quite a huge number of Africans that goes to bed, wake up every day hungry. And this situation is really not acceptable. And these people are looking up to agricultural performance, to be able to break out of this poverty and hunger trap. CADEP has helped to rally African leaders, researchers, extension, education, farmers, civil society, agribusiness, around mutually agreed investment plans to sustainably improve agricultural productivity and income. I must say that we are grateful to the many partners and friends of Africa, such as Australia, that are standing with us to free our people from the shackles of poverty and hunger. I would like to welcome the creation of the Australian International Food Security Centre by the Australian government and the decision to focus its initial actions on Africa. Again, I will repeat that Africa is very grateful for to this. I would like to commend the approach taken by ACIAR, and I see Nick Austin is on the podium with me, to thank you and your team, for the consultation with the African stakeholders, for involving us in the design of the center's program. I would also like to recall recent reviews of ACIAR's funded work in Africa that shows that the involvement of end users in the design and implementation of the program is a way of assuring impact. Secondly, we commend the center, that is the Food Security Center, for focusing its work on adoption and scaling of technologies. Personally, I believe that the key problem to Africa's lagging behind in terms of productivity is not because we don't have appropriate technologies. I believe that research has done quite a lot to come up with good technologies. It's a question of scaling out these technologies, getting them to every corner, to every farmer in any corner of Africa that would like to use those technologies, so that at the end of the day, we get continent-wide impact. You can see the impacts in isolated areas. We want country-wide impact, continent-wide impact. And I believe that this project will enable Africa to achieve that. But I would also like to advise that a program that is going for 10 years, at the end of the 10 years, what do you want to achieve? So I come back to that issue of setting targets, big targets. And I'm sure that the center will consider these requests. African constituents fully support the center's strategy that we have adopted today. And we would like to assure ACIAR, we would like to assure the government of Australia of our commitment to fully play our role to ensure the successful implementation of this program. We see the center's program as our own program. That is the way that we take it, look at it in Africa. I would also like to thank our hosts, Melissa Brown of the center, Nick Austin, Joanna Hewitt of ACIAR, the Honorable Bob Carr, the minister, which means thanks to the government through the minister for organizing this wonderful event and for the excellent hospitality that has been accorded to all of us since our arrival in this beautiful country, in this beautiful city of Sydney. I would like to thank the experts from Australia and the rest of the World Bank, Bioversity, IDRC, USAID, Syngenta Foundation, CGIAR, I've mentioned Bioversity, but also IFPRI and ILRI, I believe, are represented here today. You've come a long way to share your rich insights with us, and we are grateful. I also would like to thank, I believe I'll be failing in my duty, if I do not thank my African partners for sparing the time to come all that way with jet lag and all. I'm repeating it because it's affecting me as well. to contribute to the rich discussions that we've had and to witness the launch of this very important initiative for Africa. As we deliberate today through the various sessions, I noted some key issues. So, Mr. Chairman, please permit me to just read these key issues. And this is for the benefit of all of us and also for the benefit of the center. I'm going to give these issues in two parts, one in research and the other in partnerships. In research, understanding decision-making processes of farmers, understanding barriers and incentives to adoption, work out how to measure success, find out which sectors are involved in economic growth, linkages of water security to food security, efficiency of water use, investigating groundwater, policies to improve linkages to market for smallholders, better utilization of indigenous crops, post-harvest loss, research policy successes and failures, need indicators for sustainable diets, and vision of success. Under partnerships, need to develop truly collaborative, trustful, and respectful partnerships. Participatory partnerships between farmers and researchers. Innovative public-private partnerships. Linkages between researchers, economic planners, and policymakers to allow evidence-based options to be presented. Partnerships to provide opportunities to educate women. Need communities of practice. These are some of the key issues that I thought came out of the discussions that we have today. I thought that the discussions were very rich, panel discussions, I think, provided lots of very useful information. And I think the quality is very high, and it shows the kind of work that we are going to do on the ground. This work, some of them are supported by Australia and done in Africa in collaboration with Australian institutions. And I must commend all the presenters for doing a very, very good job. Now, have we achieved our goal today? Have we achieved our objectives? I believe we have. We've even gone beyond that by the richness of the discussion and the presentations. We've witnessed the launching of the center, so the center is now there to stay. And Africa will give the center all its support, all the support that is needed. We've validated the center's strategy, so we have a working document that we should move along with. So ladies and gentlemen, I repeat, it's been a highly productive day, and I thank all of you for achieving this great, making this great event a big, 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 big success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those comments, Monty. And also, you have to promise, though, I think, to share that list with Melissa so we can always, I saw everyone trying to take notes, but I'm sure that we'll want to get that into the record. So thank you for that. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Nick Austin. Nick is the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research, and thus a critical partner in the venture that we're celebrating here today. So welcome, Nick.
Thank you, Rob. And as I stand before you this afternoon, I wonder, as Jean said, what can I possibly say after such a wonderful day? I guess I should start by warmly acknowledging the presence of such high-level distinguished guests to our conference, and ministers, high-level delegates, officials, senior figures in government, as well as subject experts from around the globe, but particularly from Africa and from Australia, and absolutely pivotal to the success of today's conference. So thank you indeed. Today's conference has marked a truly important step, I think, in agricultural research partnerships between Australia and Africa. It's a special day for ACIAR as we launch the new Food Security Centre, and we're proud indeed to have been given the responsibility or the carriage of the new centre. And it's exciting to see a venture going from concept to reality in a relatively short time. As we've heard for almost 30 years now, ACIAR has been fortunate to be able to support programs in the African continent. We've supported some 85 projects over that duration, and you may have seen in your satchels a summary of those projects. It's this document that takes a look at successes and programs that have been less successful, and we've obviously heard about one of the particular successes from Dr. Masami, and we're pleased to have Dr. Robin Alders here, of course, in the audience. So that program with Newcastle disease, but not all, of course, have been as successful. And as we've just heard, it's important we do learn from the programs that aren't as successful, and we learn from those programs particularly. And one of the themes is that need to really come together and engage and understand the opportunities. That's really pivotal to the successful projects, and that's come out very strongly through this document and through many other assessments. And that's why today's conference has been so important, both in confirming the focus of the centre, but allowing us to really drill down in some detail. And I think we're all aware that we've been challenged for time throughout the day, and I think that's such a great reflection of the engagement and the enthusiasm and the positivity around the themes and around the opportunities that lie before us. I'll reflect very briefly on some of today's discussions, but I also just wanted to make a quick comment around the Food Security Centre itself. And of course, as we've heard, the centre has given ACIAR the opportunity to make Africa the focus of our efforts, now representing more than a quarter of our total programming, and that change from only a few percent a few years ago has been really exciting for us. And we've heard the case for realignment towards Africa is compelling, so I won't cover that ground again. We've got the opportunity, therefore, to do much more, and we've heard into some detail around the themes, the opportunities in nutrition, opportunities in supporting social policies, agricultural policies, adoption strategies and much more. But particularly exciting is the focus on the scale and speed of impact, and of course the theme of bridging research and practice, and I think that's been very much endorsed with the comments today. As Professor Monty Jones alluded to, there's a certain symmetry about us sharing the stage here, where 9 months ago we shared the stage at FARA in Accra with many partners, and indeed some individuals here today, so NEPAD, ASARECA, CORAF, CAMESA, ACTESA, RU Forum and many others, and it wasn't by chance that our first meeting was in the African continent, and now we meet again here in Australia. I think that's both symbolic and critically important in ensuring that the capacity in Australia is being brought to the most appropriate efforts. Professor Jones has articulated very clearly some messages for the centre, supporting the centre's focus on adoption and impact, but again, challenging us with the targets in 10 years' time, and I think that's something that we've heard very clearly. Professor Jones has also outlined the key take-homes from some of the themes, and I think clearly those themes could have been conferences in their own right, and I think have really assisted us elaborate some of the detail, and I know Melissa's at least on her second or third book of notes from the rich advice that we've received, capably summarised by our moderators, but also again, as we've just heard, by Professor Jones. So, in summary or in conclusion, it seems only yesterday when our Prime Minister made the announcement for the Food Security Centre at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Perth. Indeed, it's only just a little over a year. As today's excellent interactions have demonstrated, a lot has been achieved over the intervening 12 or 13 months. I think we've heard clearly consensus on the strategic direction of the centres, and I've heard some strong messages of support throughout the day and in conversations in the sidelines. We've also, again, heard the urgency for action and for practical results. So it's pleasing that we've been able to program some of that funding very rapidly, in this case $14 million of project scoping activities and early start projects. And again, based on the early guidance that we received through FARA and through the priorities that have been articulated under CADP. Importantly, we've been striving to complement existing initiatives and being alert and aware of new initiatives as they emerge, including the G8 New Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition, CGIAR efforts and Dublin process and the like, and efforts of donors such as Canada and USAID. I think the fact that co-contributions to date total somewhere around about half of total program funding suggest that that alignment, we're starting to find that. And I think most excitingly, the new partnership with IDRC that we've heard about and that John's alluded to presents us with even greater opportunities to target nutrition post-harvest losses. On a personal note, can I say what an enormous pleasure it's been to work with Jean and with his team. We've heard a lot today about partnerships and the overriding importance of partnerships and the importance of trust, and I think that's been very apparent in our discussions in bringing forward this new partnership under the auspices of the Food Security Centre. The Centre's objectives absolutely can only be achieved through excellent partnerships. I think today's helped us further cement existing partnerships, and it's also allowed us to explore some new ones, and it's given us a glimpse at what else is possible. For me, it's been enormously positive, and I thank you all for that. We'll take forward the valuable guidance that we've heard, and we look forward with enthusiasm to the opportunity to contribute, hopefully in a very tangible way, to the next decade of growth on the African continent. And finally, I've got the brief but very pleasurable task of acknowledging some contributions to today's conference. And I won't repeat the acknowledgements that Professor Jones has made, but certainly lend my support to those words of thanks. Could I also pay particular thanks to those who played key roles in the conference, the moderators, the panel members, the speakers, but all who have shared expertise, and I think that's everyone in this room who has shared expertise, contributed to the discussions. And finally, thank you to Melissa and to her team, Wendy, Bronnie, Joanne, Liz, with support of Kathy and Gabrielle. I think for those who've noticed there's not a great gender balance amongst that team there, so we've got some work to do. But they've worked tirelessly over the last months, as you might imagine. They've done a terrific job, so a big thank you. It's been a challenging and a wonderful ride, and I don't expect to see any of you on Monday. It's now my task, and with some sadness, I guess, to close today's formal proceedings. Sadness because there's such wonderful discussion, but I look forward to celebrating with each of you this evening. So, my thanks.